Yo Gotti responded after his Memphis restaurant was shot up, and the move he made in the aftermath has everybody talking all over again. A business connected to one of the most recognizable names in Memphis rap has now put a new rule in place, and the question everybody is asking is simple. Why? Why would a restaurant and nightlife venue in one of Memphis's most competitive areas suddenly go 30 and over? That answer reveals everything about the environment surrounding that establishment and the danger that has followed Yo Gotti's name for years. A shooting that happened years ago never fully went away, and the decision being made right now has forced the entire conversation back to the surface. Stay with us, because the story behind that age restriction goes a lot deeper than a simple policy change. But real quick, if you're serious about winning in the rap game, I put everything I know into one ebook. I'm talking how to actually grow an audience from zero, how to get labels reaching out to you with deals, and even how to get paid in this industry without ever touching a mic. And nah, it's not too late. People love to say the wave passed. It didn't. New artists and new hustlers are blowing up every single day, and the ones eating are the ones who started now instead of waiting. It's only $14.99. That's a few cups of coffee for a blueprint that can change how you move in this game forever. Links in the description bio. Go grab it. Then let's get back to the video. Yo, what's good, fam? Today, we are breaking down the full story of Yo Gotti's Memphis restaurant Privé, the violent shooting that rocked the venue back in March 2023, the history of Memphis rap tension surrounding Yo Gotti's world, and the new 30-plus age policy that has everyone revisiting everything. Let's get into it. To understand why anything that happens at Privé carries the weight that it does, you first have to understand who Yo Gotti is in the context of Memphis. Mario Mims was born on May 19, 1981, and grew up in one of the city's most difficult environments. He started rapping in his teens and built his career the long way, releasing mixtapes and albums through the late 90s and early 2000s before breaking through to mainstream success with projects like I Am and I Am the Album in 2013. He eventually landed at Epic Records and Roc Nation, collaborated with some of the biggest names in hip-hop, and built a reputation as one of the most enduring figures out of the South. He also built Collective Music Group, known as CMG, a record label operation that became one of the most commercially significant imprints in modern rap. CMG brought in major artists and produced records that charted nationally, cementing Yo Gotti's status not just as a rapper, but as a legitimate music industry operator with real business weight behind his name. CMG became home to artists like Moneybagg Yo, 42 Dugg, ESTG, Mosey, and others who extended the label's commercial reach well beyond Memphis. Gotti built something that functioned as a genuine industry operation, not just a vanity label. And the success of CMG artists on the national stage reflected his ability to identify talent and create infrastructure around it. And that business weight extended beyond music. Privé, located at 6980 Winchester Road in Memphis's Hickory Hill area, became one of the more notable establishments associated with Gotti's name. The restaurant and nightlife venue was described as an upscale operation serving American and soul food in a fine dining space with a full bar. It was the kind of place that reflected a certain vision of elevated Memphis nightlife, and being connected to Yo Gotti naturally gave it a profile that extended beyond its neighborhood. For years, Privé operated as a successful business without major public incident. 10 years of business, as the restaurant's own attorney would later note, without anything like what eventually happened there. But here is where it gets real, because within the past year or so, word began circulating that Privé had implemented a new admission policy. The venue reportedly introduced a 30 and over age requirement, meaning that younger adults who might previously have entered the establishment no longer qualified under the new rules. Now, a 30-plus minimum age is unusual for a restaurant and nightlife venue, and that immediately raised questions.
Being 21 still isn't old enough to get into certain restaurants here in Memphis. Here at Privé, a new sign says you have to be 30 years or older just to get inside.
That's where it needs to be right now.
30 and up. That's what a sign reads on a Memphis restaurant, Privé. For more than a decade, it has welcomed people 21 and older. But this week, they're saying, after a certain time, only people of ages 30 and up can enter, stating it was a way to, quote, enhance the dining experience.
Most establishments use 21 as their adult entry threshold. Some more exclusive clubs push it to 25. But 30? That is a number that raises questions, and those questions immediately pointed people toward Privé's history. The official framing around such a policy would typically emphasize a desire to create a more mature, upscale atmosphere, a fine dining experience oriented toward an older clientele with different expectations about a night out. And that explanation is not unreasonable on its face. There is a legitimate business logic to repositioning a venue toward a more mature customer base. But the first thing people did when they heard about Privé's new age rule was pull up the venue's 2023 history and start drawing connections. So let me take you back to March 29th, 2023, and be very clear about this date, because the way this story has been circulating can make it easy to think the shooting happened recently. It did not. The major incident outside Privé happened more than 3 years ago, and the current discussion about the age policy is what has brought that history back into focus. At approximately 11:17 in the evening on March 29, 2023, the Memphis Police Department responded to a shooting at Privé. What they found was devastating. 2 men had been struck by gunfire. One was pronounced dead at the scene. The second was transported to a hospital where he later died from his injuries. 5 other people, 4 men and a woman between the ages of 25 and 37, were also wounded and transported to hospitals in private vehicles. Around 40 bullets had been fired during the shootout. Let that number sit for a second. 40 rounds discharged outside an upscale Memphis restaurant late on a Wednesday night. The scale of that shooting alone was enough to generate national headlines.
Violent incidents outside the restaurant. One of the more notable ones from 2023, where 2 people were killed during a shooting. Memphis Police Department says in the last year, there have been 13 different incidents reported to them involving that location.
And the connection to Yo Gotti's name amplified the coverage significantly. Memphis police said that their preliminary investigation indicated the shooting stemmed from an altercation that started inside the club, though Privé's attorney pushed back on that characterization immediately. Arthur Horn, the lawyer representing both Yo Gotti and his mother Geraldine Sims, who co-owns the restaurant, told local news that nothing happened inside the restaurant. His account was that the establishment was in the process of closing for the evening, and what unfolded happened in the parking lot as people were leaving. He was clear that this was a tragedy, but also that in 10 years of business, nothing like this had ever happened at Privé. Horn also confirmed that Yo Gotti was not in Memphis that night and that no members of his family were involved in the shooting. Those clarifications were important because the public association between Gotti and the venue immediately generated speculation about the nature of the attack and who might have been behind it. The official response was one of grief and clarification rather than deflection. On behalf of Privé, Horn acknowledged the tragedy directly while also pushing back on the framing that the restaurant itself had been the site of an internal conflict that spilled out. Whether the origin was fully inside the club as initial police reporting suggested, or fully in the parking lot as the restaurant's attorney maintained, the result was the same. 2 people dead, 5 wounded, 40 rounds fired, and a high-profile Memphis venue at the center of another painful headline. No public confirmation of suspects, arrests, or officially established motives was made in the reporting around the shooting. What the investigation confirmed was the loss of 2 lives, the wounding of 5 others, and the eruption of approximately 40 rounds of gunfire in the parking lot of a high-profile Memphis venue. Any connection between the shooting and specific rival camps or ongoing feuds in Memphis rap remained in the territory of speculation and online commentary rather than established law enforcement findings. But here is where the story does not exist in isolation, because Privé's 2023 incident did not happen in a vacuum. It happened inside a Memphis rap environment that had already been defined by years of documented tension, tragedy, and public conflict. And to understand why the shooting landed the way it did, why it was not simply reported as a violent incident at a Memphis restaurant, but instead became a story about Memphis rap as a whole, you have to understand the larger world that surrounds it. Privé had already been in the news cycle connected to the broader Memphis situation once before, when it was temporarily closed in November 2021 following Young Dolph's death. That earlier moment had placed the restaurant inside a narrative that it had no direct part in creating. By March 2023, any violent incident at Privé was going to be read through that lens regardless of its actual cause or connection to any ongoing conflict. Law enforcement and local insiders close to the Memphis situation viewed the Privé shooting as a direct continuation of the retaliation cycle that had been building since Dolph's death, with rival factions actively targeting Gotti's business assets and inner circle. The venue had become symbolic in a way that its owners could not have fully anticipated when they opened it a decade earlier. The relationship between Yo Gotti's CMG World and Young Dolph's Paper Route Empire, known as PRE, became one of the most recognizable rivalries in Memphis rap. The feud between the two camps developed over years through music, interviews, social media exchanges, business competition, and personal history. According to reporting, the conflict reportedly began in 2014 when Dolph declined to sign to Gotti's record label, choosing instead to remain independent and build Pre-A on his own terms. That professional divergence became the seed of something that grew significantly over the following years. It showed up in diss tracks, in interviews where both sides talked around and sometimes directly about the other, and in the general energy that surrounded public appearances by either camp in Memphis. What made it especially dangerous was that the rivalry did not stay contained to the music industry. Various local gang factions, including subsets of the Vice Lords and the Crips, became regionally aligned with either CMG or PRE, turning what started as a rap beef into something with much deeper street-level roots and consequences. The line between music industry competition and something far more serious was never entirely clear from the outside, and the violence that followed made it clear that the stakes were real. Young Dolph built his career as one of the most independently successful rappers out of the South. He refused major label deals at multiple points where he could have taken them, built his own distribution and business structure, and created a loyal fan base through consistent output and an authentic voice. His independence was not just a business strategy, it was a statement. And the tension with the CMG world became part of the public narrative surrounding his career. The dangers around Dolph's career became publicly visible in a dramatic way in September 2017, when his vehicle was struck by what was reported to be more than 100 bullets while he was in Charlotte, North Carolina. He survived. An associate of Yo Gotti named Corey McClendon was arrested in connection with that shooting, but was later released without charges being filed. That legal outcome meant no one was officially established as responsible for the Charlotte attack through the criminal justice system. In November 2021, the tensions reached a point of devastating finality. Young Dolph was shot and killed on November 17, 2021, while visiting Makita's Cookies, a bakery in Memphis. He was 36 years old. He had gone to pick up cookies. A simple, ordinary errand in the city where he was born and built his career ended with him losing his life outside a local business. The grief that followed was enormous. Memphis mourned him publicly and intensely. The loss of a fully independent rapper who had survived bullets before and kept building was felt beyond music in a way that those outside Memphis may not have fully understood. In the immediate aftermath of Dolph's death, Memphis police temporarily shut down Privé as a precautionary measure given the public history between Dolph and the Gotti world. No public connection between Gotti or CMG and Dolph's murder was established by authorities. Eventually, two men named Justin and Cornelius Smith were charged and convicted in connection with Dolph's murder, bringing at least partial legal resolution to a case that had generated enormous public speculation. But Dolph's death did not end the tension surrounding the Memphis rap environment. If anything, it intensified the speculation and fear surrounding the people most publicly associated with that world. Privé went through a period of heightened scrutiny and security attention. And then, in March 2023, the shooting happened. Real talk, the way Privé has existed in public consciousness since 2021 is not the same as how it existed before. The restaurant became a symbol of something larger than itself. Because of its connection to Yo Gotti and the visible tension surrounding Memphis rap, every incident there was interpreted through a much bigger lens. The parking lot of a Hickory Hill restaurant became a location freighted with meaning that extended far beyond its actual geography. Then came another devastating moment in January 2024. On January 13, 2024, Anthony Mims, known publicly as Big Juke and identified as Yo Gotti's older brother, was shot and killed outside Perignon's restaurant and event center in Memphis. He was 47 years old. Big Juke was not simply Gotti's older brother in a family sense. He was a prominent figure within CMG, heavily involved in managing the label's street operations and serving as a key part of the infrastructure surrounding Gotti's world. Police classified the attack as a targeted shooting, TMZ reported that Big Juke had attended a relative's funeral earlier that same day, before the incident occurred. No suspects were publicly identified or arrested in the immediate aftermath, though the investigation continued. The police presence at Big Juke's own funeral was remarkable, with reports of snipers on rooftops, a helicopter circling the church, and dozens of Memphis police vehicles on site. The death of Yo Gotti's older brother placed a different kind of grief directly inside Gotti's personal world. This was not a rival or an associate or a distant connection. This was family. Big Juke had been a presence in Gotti's personal and professional world for years, and the circumstances surrounding his death, the targeted nature of the attack, the location outside a Memphis restaurant, the fact that he had spent the earlier part of that same day at a funeral, created a picture of loss that was both personal and symbolic. Rick Ross publicly called for peace in Memphis following the news. Wack 100 sent a message to Gotti directly. The response from the broader music community reflected an understanding that this was not simply another headline. This was someone's brother, killed in a city that had already seen too much of this kind of loss. And the public reaction to the killing was shaped by the accumulated weight of everything that had already happened in the Memphis rap environment over the preceding years. But here is where the real picture starts forming. Because when you line up everything that has happened around Yo Gotti's world over the past several years, a pattern emerges that is hard to ignore. His restaurant gets shot up, his brother gets killed outside a restaurant in what police call a targeted attack, his rival gets murdered in the city they both call home. The people around him keep ending up in the middle of violent situations. At some point, the question stops being whether these incidents are connected and starts being whether someone has been deliberately coming for everything associated with Yo Gotti's name. That is the conversation that has been running underneath all the public commentary about Privé and Memphis rap. Not just that violence exists in Memphis, but that there appears to be a sustained pressure on Gotti's circle, specifically his restaurant, his brother, his business, his world. The incidents keep landing close, and the people in Memphis who understand how these things work have not missed a pattern. Big Juke was not a random victim of random Memphis violence. Police called it targeted. A man shot outside a restaurant after attending a funeral is not an accident. That is a message. And when you place that next to the Privé shooting, next to what happened to Dolph, next to all of it, the picture that emerges is of a man who has become a target in his own city, whether he wants to acknowledge that publicly or not. Gotti has not said much about all of this publicly. He has mourned his brother and kept moving. That silence is its own kind of statement. In Memphis, talking too much about who is coming for you only accelerates things. You handle it differently. You change who gets into your spaces. You adjust. The 30+ rule at Privé is one adjustment. The heightened security at Big Juke's funeral, with snipers on rooftops and a helicopter circling overhead, was another. These are not the moves of a man operating in a safe environment. Now, this is where we got to address the way these separate incidents get woven together into a single continuous narrative. The shooting at Privé in March 2023, Young Dolph's death in 2021, Big Juke's murder in January 2024, and other incidents involving people connected to Memphis rap have all been woven together in online discussion into a story about an ongoing war. But each of these incidents is its own event, with its own circumstances, its own victims, its own law enforcement investigations, and its own unresolved questions. Memphis is a city where neighborhood identities, personal histories, and long-standing relationships overlap in ways that make the full picture of any given conflict genuinely difficult to pin down. The CMG and PRE rivalry was real and documented in music and public statements. But Memphis is more complicated than any single beef narrative can contain, and the people who grew up there carry histories that do not always fit neatly into the camps outsiders draw around them. What is not complicated is the business reality that Privé now has to manage. A venue associated with a high-profile name, located in an area with documented tension, that was the site of a double homicide in 2023, faces real questions about how to operate going forward. The 30 and over policy, whatever its specific origin and rationale, represents an attempt to reshape who comes through those doors and what the establishment looks like from a risk and brand perspective. From a pure business standpoint, an age restriction can function as a form of crowd management. Older customers typically bring different behavioral patterns to a nightlife environment. They tend to arrive earlier, leave earlier, spend more on food and higher-end drinks, and are statistically less likely to be involved in the kinds of spontaneous altercations that can escalate into violence in late-night parking lot situations. An older crowd also changes the energy inside a venue in ways that affect everything from the music being played to the way staff interactions unfold to how long the average table stays. A 30-plus policy is also a signal to potential customers about what kind of establishment Privé is positioning itself as. It says fine dining and upscale nightlife, not general admission nightclub. It is a marketing decision as much as a safety decision, and the two are not mutually exclusive. There are also financial considerations beyond the customer experience. A restaurant that has experienced a double homicide on its property faces insurance implications, security costs, and reputational questions that do not resolve themselves with time. A policy change that signals a different direction can help reshape that calculus, even if it cannot erase what happened. Age restrictions, dress codes, and guest list requirements are all tools venues use to define their identity and manage risk simultaneously. And Privé's 30-plus policy is the most visible version of that toolkit. The real kicker, though, is that the age policy announcement effectively reopened a chapter of Memphis rap history that many people had stopped following closely. A policy change at Privé sent people back to 22 or 3 shooting coverage, back to the CMG and PRE history, back to Young Dolph, back to Big Juke. The 30-plus rule did not start a new conversation. It restarted an old one, and it gave that conversation fresh urgency by attaching it to a current business decision rather than a historical news story. Yo Gotti has built his career around navigating exactly this kind of environment. He is 44 years old now, a veteran of Memphis rap who has survived in an industry in a city where surviving is not guaranteed. He has released music through multiple label deals, built CMG into a legitimate major player, and maintained relevance in a genre that discards most of its participants within a few years of their debut. CMG continues to operate. His music continues to be released and consumed. His business interests extend well beyond any single venue. But the attention that follows his name means that every decision connected to his world, including a restaurant's admission policy, becomes part of a larger story that the public is always watching and always interpreting through everything that has come before. At the end of the day, fam, what this story is really about is not a single shooting or a single policy. It is about what it means to build a business, a career, and a life in an environment where the distances between music, business, neighborhood, and real-life danger can be very small. Memphis has produced extraordinary art and extraordinary pain in equal measure, and the people who come from that city carry both with them. Yo Gotti has been navigating this environment for over 25 years. He has built an empire from it, a label, a catalog of music, a business portfolio, a national presence, and he has done all of that while living inside a city and a scene where the stakes of that kind of success can carry real personal risks. The shooting at Privé in March 2023 claimed 2 lives. Big Juke was killed in January 2024. Young Dolph was gone in November 2021. These are not abstract events. They are permanent losses that have shaped everything that came after them. The 30-plus rule at Privé may look like a simple line on the flyer, but in the context of everything that has surrounded that establishment, that city, and those names over the past several years, it represents something much more significant. It represents a high-profile business attempting to chart a different path forward in the aftermath of violence, loss, and public scrutiny that most businesses never have to face. The shooting happened in March 2023. The response happening now is an attempt to define what Privé becomes after that night. Whether the 30-plus policy achieves what its owners hope it will, whether it reshapes the venue's identity and reduces the risk of future incidents, or whether it simply becomes a footnote in a story that continues to write itself, only time will tell. What is certain is that the announcement forced people to revisit everything, and in doing so, it reminded anyone paying attention of just how much this story has accumulated and of just how much is still unresolved. Drop your thoughts in the comments on what you think about Privé's new policy and what it means for the bigger picture, and subscribe because we will be right here following this story as it continues to develop.